I have never had a harder time choosing characters from a community redraw than I did for this episode. I mean, for one thing, we got way more submissions than usual, but also I wanted to make sure to pick characters that had a nice blend of different personality types, superpowers, backstories, designs, so that we would have an interesting class dynamic in the Trismegistus Academy for Heroic Enlightenment storyline, which starts today. Now, admittedly, the characters I'm drawing today actually don't have a ton of play in today's story. We get a brief explanation of who they are at the end of the episode, but they will be recurring characters in this series going forward. Today's episode is more about establishing what exactly this school is. But I hope you all enjoy a lore-heavy episode and some cool designs, so let's get into it, shall we? Let's go.
Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
You get that it's entirely possible this is a terrible idea, right? Alexis said as she and Sterling prepped their multiverse jumping wristwatch thingies, or Mujwawuts as the device's inventor had dubbed them, to take them both to dimension H333. Sterling chuckled. Oh, come on, what are you, mad that we're missing Lake Day? We'll probably get back in time for the, second half or something. Ha ha, Alexis said. No, I mean jumping to a random dimension looking for some multiverse super school to send Jake and Anna to on the second-hand word of a guy who has almost killed you before, kept Kate prisoner for 20 years, and who we're all pretty sure is planning an overseer genocide. For all we know, Dresden could just be sending us into a trap. Sterling smirked. It's not a trap. Just you watch, a year from now, Jake and Anna are going to be deep in their studies at this place, and Dresden is going to be all buddied up to us, helping us save people across the multiverse. Alexis shook her head. I'm pretty sure you said something similar about Lucifer back in the day. How did that turn out again? I was a lot less mature and convincing back then, but I also think that I could have turned him around if Astra hadn't killed him first. Now, are we going or not? Alexis flexed her arm, and all the rocks within 30 feet of her shot towards her and collected around her fist. Now we're going. One of us has got to be ready in case this is a trap. Sterling tapped his Mujwawut and a purple light swelled across his body. Alexis did the same. When the light cleared, they were both in another world. But not in a forest or city or mountains or anything like they'd usually arrive to. They both squinted at the bright lights around them. It was nearly overwhelming. At first, it seemed as though they'd just appeared into a white void, but as their eyes adjusted, they realized they were in some kind of stone pyramid made up of luminous white bricks, with a floor coated in a very thin layer of water. Alexis spun herself around, fists still clenched. Well, look at that, a sealed room. This could totally be some kind of prison Dresden made for us to die in. Sterling looked around them in wonder. I mean, if it is, it's a very peaceful prison. Are you feeling this? It's like the air is, tingly? Like my exposed skin is getting tiny little massages. Alexis looked unconvinced. Why would you like that? You hate massages. I don't hate massages, but getting a massage from you is like getting trampled on by a stone elephant. Alexis smirked and kicked some water at him. Sterling let it splash against his arm, and the second it struck him, he unintentionally let out a loud, relaxed sigh. He quickly leaned down after and touched the water with his palm. Oh, wow, that's so weird. Touch the water, Alexis. It feels... I don't even know how to explain it, like holding hands with an angel. I'll tell you what, Sterling, I'll start frolicking about in the water with you after you prove we haven't just been trapped in some weird white prison room. When she glanced back, she saw that he was doing something with his Mujwawut. His body was engulfed in purple light again, and he was gone. Seconds later, he returned. I just teleported home and back. See? Not a trap. We can leave whenever we want. Alexis still didn't lower her rocks yet. Alright, so we can go home, but that still doesn't mean Dresden was right about there being some super school here, and even if there is, we can't find it if we can't leave this room. Sterling kept looking around until his eyes finally fell on some writing on the floor. Whoa, okay, are you seeing this? Here we go. It says, resonate with the water and the gates to Tahe will open. Alexis followed Sterling's gaze to the floor. What are you talking about? You suddenly read weird other dimensional hieroglyphics? Sterling looked confused. What? No, you can't read... Wait, what? He looked back down and suddenly saw that the writing beneath the water was indeed written in a strange set of glyphs. That's super weird. I honestly just saw it in English, but also, even still, I can still read it. Alexis suddenly cocked her head to the side. Oh, wait, I can read it too. Why can I read it? Sterling laughed. I don't know, but this is so cool. Okay, so yeah, I guess we have to resonate with the water. Alexis rolled her eyes. You know I don't speak your weird, new agey talk. What does resonate with the water mean? Sterling sat down in the water with his legs crossed. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know either, but, you know, maybe we'll intuitively figure it out. He closed his eyes, straightened his back, and shaped his hands into a triangle on his lap. Then, a few seconds later, he set his hands on his knees. He remained still, breathing slowly, then opened one eye to see if anything was happening, but it wasn't. He closed his eye again and took a deeper breath. Still, nothing. After a few more seconds, he started to chant. Om. Seriously, Sterling, what are you doing? Alexis laughed at him. I don't know, trying to resonate. Maybe it's not working because of all your defensive energy. Would you drop the rocks and try to resonate with me? No, because I have no idea what that means, and neither do you. I'm smashing a door open. I would personally prefer if you did not attempt that, though I do not imagine you'd be particularly successful in the endeavor anyhow. Sterling and Alexis both whipped around to see a third figure standing near one of the walls of the pyramid. She stood at nearly 7 feet tall and had a slender, elegant frame. She wore robes that looked like something out of an ancient mythology text. Her mouth formed into a bird-like beak, and sprouting from her head were a set of small, angelic wings that merged into her feathery hair. She walked slowly towards the two, and every step she got closer, both Sterling and Alexis felt more and more relaxed. Sterling didn't even notice that the figure was not moving through the water, but instead walking on top of it. They saw no overseer runes on the woman's arms, but still, she gave a strong sense that this woman was a protector of wherever it was that Sterling and Alexis now found themselves. As the figure completed her approach, Alexis didn't let her rocks fall away, but she did lower her fist. Despite nothing being said, she could wholeheartedly feel that this figure meant them no harm. Both your current physical forms were birthed in Dimension Alpha 016. Is this correct? Sterling stood up out of the water. Yeah, how did you know that? The figure gestured around. The Nexus Pyramid informs me whenever someone arrives in our world and tells me from which realm they have come, though I'll commonly not engage with new arrivals unless they are able to open the gates to Tahe. Sterling kept staring at the woman, enraptured by her appearance and aura. What is Tahe exactly? Without another word, the figure held out both her hands, one towards Sterling and the other to Alexis. Neither of them hesitated to put their own hands in hers. The second they did, Alexis finally let her rocks fall to the ground. Though unintentionally. She wouldn't say it aloud, but she'd felt such an overwhelming sense of peace from this woman's touch that she couldn't hold her defensive stance any longer. The figure smiled. I sense only positive intent from you both, and your presence could very well be a synchronicity that I cannot ignore. She released their hands and turned back towards the wall. Sterling and Alexis were ready to follow her, but instead of walking forward, she held out her hand. A spire of water sprung up from the floor and met her palm. As soon as it did, an entire wall of the pyramid began folding away into itself. All three of them were suddenly slid by an unseen force across the water to the now open gateway, and they stepped out onto a beautiful grassy field. Finally, they got to see the kind of dimension they jumped into. Stone-carved buildings and temples could be seen all around the near distance. They looked like something out of ancient Greece in Sterling and Alexis's world, and yet there was a class of a dozen young students sitting under a massive tree before a teacher that was showing off some kind of mechanical bird, looking like more advanced technology than anything from their own dimension. Another group of kids soon ran and flew by, waving happily at the elegant bird-faced woman. The kids all wore dramatically different clothes, and some were even different species, but they all seemed as unified as a group of close siblings. Sterling and Geel and Alexis Jones, welcome to the Trismegistus Academy for Heroic Enlightenment, which many simply refer to as Tahe. Sterling and Alexis ignored the fact that the woman just somehow knew both their names and walked alongside their guide. They watched in wonder, seeing happy and eager superpowered children running about, experimenting with their abilities, playing various sports, or just sitting in open temples reading. Sterling was wide-eyed and wishing he'd known about a place like this when he was a kid. Not that he even knew the multiverse existed back when he was the age of most of these children, who seemed to range anywhere from 3 to 18 years old. This place is absolutely beautiful. This might be a long shot, but is it named after Hermes Trismegistus? In our world, he's sort of a mythical figure thought to be the father of Hermeticism. He's like a mix of Hermes from Greek mythology and Thoth from Egyptian. Sterling petered out mid-sentence as he eyed their guide once again, noticing once more the feathery wings on her head and her bird-like beak. Wait, are you Hermes Trismegistus? She chuckled warmly. I am not, but the man you speak of is my great-grandfather. I am Evangeline Trismegistus, and the name of the academy comes from my ancestral line. Sterling's eyes shot wide open. No way, that's so cool! How many descendants does Hermes Trismegistus have? And wait, are you from our dimension then? Is that why you're letting us in here? I am not from your world, nor was my great-grandfather. My ancestor Hermes spent time in many realms of the multiverse going by many names back in his day, trying to spread his teachings, and while he himself did have pure intent, you'd likely be surprised by how many of his descendants, my brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, have utilized the strengths of the Trismegistus bloodline for ill means. Her voice briefly went somber, and the loving, warm energy around her dimmed ever so slightly, but returned as she continued. I'd like to know why it is you've come to this world. The only thing in this realm now is this academy, so I imagine it has something to do with that. But I will allow you yourselves to explain. Evangeline led them onto a small gazebo-like stone structure where they sat down on round red pillows. Sterling started. We heard there was a superhero school sort of place here and we're hoping to send some of our friends. I mean, we had no idea what to expect. This place already seems absolutely incredible. Now that we're here, I know this has to be the perfect place for Jake and Anna. They're both 13 years old and they aren't really welcome in their own dimension right now. Plus, they've got superpowers and most people from their world don't, so they need somewhere where they can learn how to use them better. This has gotta be it. Do you take applications? How do we get them in here? Well, I suppose this could be referred to as a superhero school, as you call it. We train beings born with gifts uncommon to their home world to be in touch with and become thrice great in mind, body, and soul, with a proper connection to their full selves as well as to the source energy that flows through all things. Along with a strong moral code, we can then return them to their home dimension to help others in need and elevate the loving energy that exists in all beings. We teach classes that instill self-awareness, self-discipline, curiosity, gratitude, compassion, and an open-minded view of the multiverse and all its beings and their various ways of life. We teach students here not what to think, but how to think. While our teachers here are carefully hand-picked as some of the wisest to be found across the multiverse, we make no claims to our students that any of us are perfect, and allow students, even encourage them, to question the teachings we present here so they can come to conclusions on their own, following their intuition and using the vast resources available at the Academy. Sterling was practically bouncing up and down in his seat. That sounds perfect for Jake and Anna. I mean, we try to teach them that kind of stuff ourselves, but I can't imagine we're anywhere near the level of the teachers you have here if they're the best in the multiverse. Plus, being around kids their own age, I think is going to be so good for them. This is better than anything I could have imagined. I am grateful for your enthusiastic appreciation of our institution, but unfortunately, we do not currently accept students older than the age of 6. All those you see here who are of a higher age than that came here in early childhood to begin their schooling. They themselves were carefully selected from various dimensions of the multiverse by our scouts and brought here to live out their early lives, along with their families if they have them. If the children you wish to send here are already 13, I'm afraid they are out of the range we currently accept. Sterling's excited and peaceful demeanor started to slip for the first time since meeting Evangeline. Is there any way you can take late applicants? Jake and Anna are great kids. If you give them some kind of test, I'm sure they'd show you how much potential they have. I trust that they are good children, but you see, by the end of a child's 7th year, their field of belief becomes very difficult to alter, and they'd require much more attention than we could likely provide. What's a field of belief? Sterling asked, trying to hold on to hope. Every being, and even each realm of the multiverse, has a field of belief, what they will accept as possible, which in turn has a direct impact on what they are capable of doing and what they are capable of seeing. The overseer of a given realm can also have an impact on the resident of the worlds they watch. If the overseer's own field of belief is quite limited, it makes it more difficult for their people to expand their own personal fields. For instance, the test of resonance with the water in our Nexus Pyramid. Every being with a soul is technically capable of resonating with the water to open the pyramid, but if you are born into a world where this is considered impossible, and you grew past the age of 7 with certain beliefs of what you are capable of trained into your mind, it can be nearly impossible to teach you to achieve proper resonance with the water, hence why you were both unable to open the gateway as I did. Sterling fidgeted with his fingers. I mean, maybe I could have figured it out if I'd tried long enough. We're both really open-minded people. I mean, we adapted super quickly to learning that the multiverse was a thing, and Jake and Anna did too. Evangeline smiled softly and tilted her head. I appreciate that, Sterling, but it is not as simple as being open-minded. While that is certainly an important step in expanding your field of belief, if it has been programmed into your mind at an early age that you are so limited, then it has also been programmed into every cell of your current physical form. It can thereafter take years and years of constant work to shift you into a new expanded belief system that allows you to be in touch with the full spectrum of abilities that could have been your birthright. Sterling tried to conceal his desperation, but wanted so badly for Jake and Anna to get a chance at this beautiful place. Even if their field of belief is kinda limited, can't they come here anyway? Maybe spending time with so many people that have wide open fields of belief could help them learn to expand their own. I mean, the people you spend the most time around have a direct impact on how you act and live, right? So couldn't that impact their field and make it grow faster? Well, what you say is true. Unfortunately, it also means their presence in one of our classes could potentially have a negative impact on the learning of others. You see, being around someone with a very limited field of belief can make it more difficult for those with an expanded one to use their own abilities. For instance, if a sorcerer from a world where magic is embraced and widely accepted transported themselves into, say, Dimension Alpha 002, where the very idea of magic is mocked as pure fiction, that sorcerer may be completely unable to use his own magic, or at least only able to use it in a very limited capacity that could be explained away by the residents of that realm as trickery. I am very sorry for this, but I cannot allow their presence to hinder the learning and expansion of our current students. Sterling racked his mind for anything to say that could convince her. He knew he had to be able to find something. This wasn't an opportunity he could let slip away. But before he could think of anything, Alexis, who'd been sitting in silence this entire time, finally chimed in. I don't know, lady, it sounds to me like you're passing up on a great opportunity to see how good you and your teachers here really are. Sterling looked over at her anxiously, then up to Evangeline for her response. The woman still looked quite peaceful, but also intrigued and almost kind of eager, as if she'd been waiting for Alexis to say something. Please elaborate, Alexis. Well, you guys do seem like you do a lot of good stuff here, don't get me wrong, but imagine how much more useful this place could be if you proved you could expand anyone's field of belief. If I were you, I'd want to test it out. You could take a whole group of kids older than 7, keep them as a separate class from the others so they don't limit other kids, and then put them through the same schooling that the others are getting. I don't know how you measure something like a field of belief, but give it a few years and see how much that class's field expands. What's the worst that could happen? They just don't expand their fields much, and they still probably learn a lot here, right? Sterling had a wide, hopeful smile looking at Alexis, getting another reminder of why she was their group's de facto leader. He turned to Evangeline, who sat in silence for a moment. Eventually, she quietly chuckled. Even with all my knowledge and experience, the multiverse's strange workings still fascinate me. The proposal you've just given is nearly identical to one that has been given to me by one of our more stern and certainly outspoken professors. He strongly believes we should be taking children with abilities who've led difficult lives or are simply beyond our usual accepted age and attempt to give them the same schooling as those who come to us in their more formative years. In fact, he has worked so hard to convince me that this very morning prior to your arrival, I sent scouts out to seek 6 possible new students between the ages of 8 and 16 that they deemed would be well suited, though I had not yet made my decision on whether we would move forward with this new class. In my meditations this morning, I set the intention to be given a clear sign of whether or not we should move forward with this possibility. Your arrival certainly strikes me as a clear sign from the multiverse that this is a path we must travel down, especially considering the dimension you hail from. Sterling was practically bouncing out of his seat, even though technically she hadn't confirmed what he wanted to hear, that Jake and Anna could attend, but before she could go on, Alexis asked, "What's so special about our dimension? You've mentioned it a couple times, but you said you weren't from there, right?" Evangeline's head sunk ever so slightly, and her eyes skated along the ground. "I am not, though yours is one of many dimensions that has had great strife fall upon it due to the actions of a member of the Trismegistus lineage, who misused his powers greatly. My brother, in fact, raised to be a bringer of light, but who became entangled with the wrong beings long ago and was led down a dark path." She looked back up at both of them. "He had long since denounced his full name, but I imagine you are both familiar with Lucifer Trismegistus?" Both Alexis and Sterling's eyes shot wide open at the mention of the man they'd spent years fighting against. They looked at each other, seemingly hoping that the other person would respond first. Neither was eager to speak up, but soon Alexis finally asked, "Lucifer was your brother?" "Yes, and he, along with some of my other siblings and relatives, are the reason I decided to start this school in the first place. The more enlightened beings there are in the multiverse with unique gifts, along with the ones we can all naturally possess, the more likely it is that beings like Lucifer can be convinced to change their ways or defeated if need be." Alexis looked at Sterling, neither of them seeming certain of what they should say, but soon enough Sterling decided to just be honest and said, "Alexis and I fought Lucifer for years, and technically we weren't the ones who killed him in the end, but we did basically play a part in his death." Evangeline leaned forward and put a hand on each of their shoulders. "I am truly sorry for the pain he caused you and your world. I only learned of his actions after it was already too late. You have my true thanks for protecting your world from his wrath." Sterling breathed a sigh of relief. He'd never had to tell someone that he helped kill their brother, and couldn't imagine most people responding the same way. Evangeline stood up. "I will begin making preparations and schedules. It will likely take a month, perhaps 2, but your friends can be 2 of the members of our new class of 6. You may tell Jake and Anna that the Trismegistus Academy for Heroic Enlightenment eagerly awaits their attendance." Sterling leapt up. "Thank you so much. They are going to love it here, and you are going to love them, I promise." She chuckled warmly. I love everyone, Sterling, but I do look forward to meeting these children you speak of so highly, as well as the 4 other students they'll be learning alongside in our little unorthodox class, or maverick class, let's say. Sterling and Alexis spent a few more hours touring the various buildings, meeting some of the teachers, and making some of the final preparations. Sterling and Alexis, essentially acting as Jake and Anna's guardians, would have a home prepared for them so they could come and stay as part of Jake and Anna's support system whenever they needed. Jake and Anna would be permitted to leave the dimension, but would be heavily encouraged to spend the majority of their time in H333 to ensure they immersed themselves as fully as possible in the elevated energy of this world and its current residents. They also got to learn a bit more about the history of the school and this dimension. Evangeline had only started it 12 years ago, so there weren't actually any graduates yet. They intended to keep students until they were 18, then send them back to their homes, but to return for regular updates and feedback from their professors for a period of 4 more years. The dimension itself, H333, had been abandoned long before Evangeline found it, and from the high vibrational energy of it, she assumed that the beings who resided here became so elevated spiritually that they transcended the multiverse and ceased to exist on the physical plane of existence. With no others utilizing it, Evangeline decided that it was the perfect place to create her academy. There were currently 1,234 students at the academy, but the dimension had around 10,000 residents overall, including families of the children, teachers, chefs, farmers, builders, and various other people who helped the academy run. Sterling was bordering on jealous by the end of their time there that he couldn't attend himself, but had decided that someday he'd elevate his own field of belief enough to become a teacher at the academy, though he kept that to himself for the time being. They said their temporary goodbyes to Evangeline, then Sterling and Alexis both eagerly returned to their own world, where they were met with a rather unusual scene involving their friends at the lake fighting off slimy monsters from another dimension. But soon after all that was handled, Sterling and Alexis told Jake and Anna and all the others about the new school the kids were attending, and they got very excited by what they heard. Also, unnoticed by Sterling and Alexis, one of their friends, Vasilia Kuznet, who was listening on, was particularly intrigued by the academy and slipped away near the end of the conversation. 2 weeks later, Sterling and Alexis were visited by a scout of Evangeline's and given the roster for the Maverick class. Jake and Anna read through it ecstatically, ready to learn more about the students they'd be learning alongside. The first was Darwin N. Ambler, a 15-year-old who can use the bones of extinct animals to temporarily resurrect them. The more he resurrects a specific creature, the more a bond he makes with them, and the more likely they are to do what he says. Second was Amelia Blonsky, the 15-year-old daughter of a rehabilitated supervillain named Abomination, and an alien of the Piscis volan species. In her normal form, Amelia has elevated speed, strength, durability, and the power to breathe underwater. She also has a freak form, as she calls it, in which she becomes a difficult-to-control fish beast. On top of that, she also has a piece of an alien's diamond flesh embedded in her skin. This is able to transform with her and grows as she takes on her more monstrous form. The third student was Zenith, a 16-year-old son of a human woman and a celestial being who is actually believed to be a resident of Dimension H333 prior to the beings of that realm disappearing. Zenith has the power to create light construct wings, or even jetpacks, with which he can fly at incredible speeds. He can also create weapons and utilize some light magic that has great potential to be expanded on at the Trismegistus Academy. Fourth was Kiko Tsukino, a 13-year-old girl who inherited ancestral powers given to one of her ancestors by a moon rabbit. She has enhanced speed, agility, stamina, hearing, and smell, all of which is further elevated during a full moon. Based on what Evangeline had said, they assumed that there would only be 6 names on the class list, but they were all surprised to see that there was actually a 7th student. Surprised even more so when they saw that it was a name they all recognized. Baffling to Sterling, Alexis, Jake, and Anna, the 7th and final member of the Maverick class at the Trismegistus Academy was Niseko Kuznet. I'm super excited for where we're going with these characters in the near future, and I'm excited for you all to learn more about them. So huge thank you to Dillo Raptor, Part-Time Flamingo, Gerald Porter, and Pinky for submitting these awesome characters. And of course, thank you to everybody who submitted. Again, this month was really competitive. There were a lot of submissions. Also, all the art and inks from this episode are now up on the PopCross Studios Patreon, and if you want to learn more about my creative writing process, I've actually started a new podcast series on there that's going to alternate between it being released and the Design Notes podcast. This one being called In Another Multiverse Production Journal, where I'm documenting my writing process for a side project, and that probably won't be released on PopCross Studios, but as a set of short audiobooks. The first episode of that is up now for patrons if you want to learn more about it. Now for the next month's community redraw, I want everyone to submit 2 different alien designs. One being a more monstrous alien, and one a more civilized humanoid kind of alien. Though please do not submit a xenomorph, because I am going to be taking these aliens and turning them into xenomorphs to fit into the next story that I've got planned. I'll have the instructions and deadline and stuff up on screen, and I'm excited to see what you all submit. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I heard earlier this week that I don't remember who said it, but it was essentially, the world doesn't need 2 of anyone. If you're spending too much time trying to be someone else exactly, then know that it's okay and in fact great to take inspiration from how other people do things and how other people are living, but the world needs you to live your life in your own unique way, the way you believe you are meant to. The way that feels right inside, not the way that feels like it's what other people think you should do. Someone living their own true, unique life, different from the norm, can be hugely inspiring to all the people around you. I hope that itself was inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.